welcome back to the channel, looking at Genki Comics. So with all these hauls that we've been doing, and starting the YouTube channel is all part of the process of sort of building up what it is that we're working on and using it as a way to get word about what it is that we're working on. Myself and Charles is here too. So both of us working together to put this stuff together and wanting to show you. It's been a busy few weeks for us doing a few shows, the one in Edmonton and then panel one here in Calgary, and haven't had much of a chance to sit down and like really show you folks what it is that we have for sale or you can get, because some of these things are not for sale. Just want to be clear about that. Very clear, Warner Brothers, DC Comics, that some of this stuff is not for sale. All right. So with that out of the way, we'll look at the two issues of Ganky. So this is where all of what we've been doing is kind of sprung out of. It began as just a bigger graphic novel that I've been working on. That's now done. It's 200 plus pages, autobiographical stuff, experiences growing up in small town Alberta, and kind of the intersection between some immigration stuff and Indigenous issues in Canada, all kind of intersecting with one another to create some trouble, and not in the way that I'm trying to pass any politics onto anybody, but really is a sympathetic ear, sympathetic eye towards what was going on for myself and for others at that time in the 90s in Alberta. But so as part of that, recognizing that not everybody's grown up where I grew up, and some people are going to lack some knowledge about some issues. And so as part of these graphic novels, you kind of have these documentary portions of the graphic novels to inform the reader about some of the context. So one is like immigration policy, and the other one's Canada's legacy of genocide against its own Indigenous citizens. So Genki Admission is the first one. Genki Admission is the piece about migration to Canada, getting into some of the, specifically the Civil War in El Salvador throughout the 70s and into the 80s. Long, very harsh war that pushed a lot of people out of that country. So this book, this little piece here, it talks about that and how people found their way up to Alberta. Some small town in Alberta. How does somebody from El Salvador get to some small town in Alberta? And this is that. So it gets into some of the American politics and, the United States dealings in South America during the 80s and 90s and
foreign policy. Continues. The foreign policy from the United States having far-reaching consequences, and sort of Canada's response to it in being what they felt was kind of the softer. I think that there's the one quote you have about us sort of softening the hard edges of American foreign policy.
Yeah. And what does that mean for us as somebody who's was born here, growing up here? What does that have? What impact does that have on us? Where everybody, well, not everybody, but there's a pretty vocal group here in Canada that is very anti-immigrant, and this is not that at all. This is more advocating for the same policies that we had back in those days that were altered by not this fucking guy. Well, he was part of it, but another fucking guy. This Jason Kenney, who was our premier up until
I guess this week,
couple days ago.
Yeah,
really. So his impacts on Canadian foreign policy.
Yeah, when working in federal politics.
Yeah, so some of this too is getting into some of the exploitation that happens of people who come from poorer regions in the world, such as El Salvador. Looking at programs like the Live-In Caregiver program or the Temporary Foreign Worker program here in Canada, and how exploitative those are, and who's complicit in that. Heady stuff. Yes, it is totally playing with the medium. The size of it obviously is kind of weird, but also too, it's kind of a dual thing. It's almost like a picto essay matched with
expanded
full-on
with this
essay.
with this written portion,
editorial essay kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's Genki Admission, and look at this cover.
I drew that.
Yeah,
That's me.
that's a beautiful cover.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful. Let's spread it out.
It's kind of,
let's have a full on
my
look.
first foray back into drawing after probably 15 years away, and first time really trying digital drawing out and digital coloring on my own, and
And you were nervous,
I was.
but it looks awesome. It looks so good, so good. I think in less competent hands, some things would have been done with a heavy hand, right?
Yeah,
So
I
like
mean,
these yellows coming out or this blood red, I think somebody could easily fall into the trap of just making that the focal point, or even this bullet casing here.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
full disclosure, I am a graphic designer by trade, so I'm drawing and composing, making compositions is my daily
That's
daily
your bread and
gig.
butter, literally.
That's my gig. But
Yeah.
trying to come up with a composition and then draw it was a sort of a nerve-wracking thing for me.
and you've gotten some love on this this font that you're using as well. There's a couple
Yeah.
of font heads out there that we had at the show that were like, what is that?
Yeah.
So what is it?
So this font that I use, I believe it's in the Adobe Fonts suite, but you can get it elsewhere. It's called Providence Sans.
Okay.
There's also a so sans mean that it has no serifs. It's a sans serif, no serifs. There's also a version with serifs that I use in some cases, but not in this book here usually. It's a beautiful one. It has that sort of hand rendered way, but still extremely readable. And we've used it throughout the book as we've gone. And luckily for me, Gord was into it and says keep using that. So,
it.
And it lends itself well to using these sort of sparse
It's
ways.
dramatic for sure.
good.
Awesome stuff. So that's Genki Admission. So that's the first one.
Yep.
And then we've got the second one, Genki Erasure, which is more about kind of the history of Canada's treaties, particularly here in Western Canada, as John A. Macdonald sort of pushed to unite Canada by way of the railroad, giving that history, who was impacted in that process of that push west, of course, starting with the Métis.
And it was done by the suffering and subjugation of the indigenous population.
So part of this thing is you do get a little preview of the bigger work of that bigger graphic novel that I completed, which has a very tentative title of Ganky Nation or The Nation, something along those lines. But here's just a small preview of what that would look like. And as somebody who was creating this thing in pretty significant isolation, and then just seeing it printed out like this in this format was very rewarding.
I love this because you get just a small taste of what the larger graphic novel, the render style is for most of that. And you really get to see the intricacy that you've put into your line work, and also your amazing stippling work that I'm still trying to get my head around stippling in such a nice, a good way.
It's fun. Yeah, I really enjoy
the textures you create are something I've been looking at very closely.
Thanks, dude. So that whole push west. I am borrowing from a few other artists in this, like Kent Monkman is a big one that I drew from as I was drawing these pictures. This is just a spread of I think a large chunk of the signs that exist for reserves in Alberta. I'm hoping maybe some folks will recognize the sign for their reserve. But the bigger story of the graphic novel takes place in Siksika Nation, which is just east of Calgary. I don't want to do a full flip through, but it is kind of graphic, as some of you might know about that history. Like, it's a pretty harsh history of genocide. 100%, it's genocide. So it's going to be graphic, and some of the things that are discussed in this are not nice things. But the essay portion of it more gets into making a case for, like, kind of explaining that this is still happening. It's not something that is a matter of history or old history, as some people claim. This stuff is still going on. And as far as 60s Scoop goes, I think it still continues. And that's not just my opinion, but...
Well, there's a class action lawsuit in BC that's just been given the go-ahead to proceed for what they now call the Millennium Scoop.
Yeah.
Just showing that same... the same sort of modus operandi of taking Indigenous kids from their families and placing them into largely white Christian families.
Oh, yeah.
Never stopped.
There was advertisements for it. Like, I've got that one
you do have
advertisement.
the one that's just safe in your hands.
Yeah, safe in your hands. Save these little Indigenous kids from poverty is the argument that I don't even think it's that. I don't even think they give a reason why you should save this kid, but you're saving this kid if you adopt them, which, so the day that we printed this thing is the day that this fucked up bitch and her inbred family died, which I'm sure is going to get us flagged on YouTube. But
so basically on the day we printed these was the day that Elizabeth II passed. So
we had to make a decision, a very quick decision. Do we go ahead?
And the decision is you just go with it, because
doesn't change it.
Because the criticisms you can make about the system that the figurehead, literally the figurehead represents, and what was perpetrated, that doesn't change.
No.
The history, the actions, that doesn't change.
Yeah. And really, as things have unfolded over the month since that time, you can see that nothing's changing here anytime soon.
Yep.
About co-opting tragedies. I think Chief Teresa Spence is one of the tragic figures of Canada. Now, she was discredited so aggressively by this prick here. Anyways, you can read all about that. Very happy story in this issue of Ganky. And I do want to mention this stunning painted cover.
Steve, really.
Original painted cover. I even have the original here.
Yeah, pull the original. Because the thing with Steve's work that he did for the cover here, some of it was outside of what's possible in printed medium in the way printing goes. So
it justice.
So really, when you look at this original one, it's even more incredible.
Yeah. The thing that I love about Steve's work is these textures that he puts in. I remember as a kid, like, flipping through that the 9 Inch Nails CD book for Downward Spiral, and just like that's what was being showcased in that CD book. It was the textures of that artist's work, and I think Steve does it really, really well as well. I mean, the feather's awesome and the contrast is great, but to me, like, the prize is all of this work in here.
Texture.
I love it. And with any luck, I can convince Steve to do a booklet just of his textures.
Yeah.
That's OG. You can see how much is left out in the printing, comparing it to the OG. So awesome stuff with Genki Erasure.
Mm-hmm.
That was Charles's name. He came up with that.
Oh yeah, the subtitle for that one, Erasure, because to me that's what we sought to do in this country. and often cases still seek to do is erase a culture, erase a people. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So at our table, those very depressing 2 books that we just went through, saying that it being depressing, yeah, it is, of course.
But important.
When you're in that convention hall and you've got all the anime stuff, you've got all the like unlicensed prints of everything and everybody and the whole show of it.
Like a celebration of fandom.
Yeah, a fandom, and then you've got this in there. Some people respond to it so well, and you get some really interesting conversations, and it does pull out. It pulls out a lot in people's opinions when you get talking about some of that. So to balance it out, though, we do have other projects that we do to maybe give a laugh, and it's our Genki Well line of stuff, which is at this point very, very cat oriented, because I love cat comics, and I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, we make an effort on each one to talk about how important we think cat comics are. How they've been this classic way of storytelling and palatable, and the way what that brings out in people. So as a graphic designer, these are the ones where I really feel like I get to really flex my muscle a little bit in looking at how I've done a lot of brochures and things and pieces like this in the past, and now we really get to poke fun at all of it. So these things do a few things. It gives us an excuse to really showcase some beautiful cat art that is given to us by many different contributors. As well, it lets us make some really funny cat jokes, but also some really funny jokes about how both things are advertised to people, to who they're advertised, and how those things are done. So we've got our cat retirement village, and this was such a fun one because it pokes fun at how we sort of that nature that we do with our elderly, with our elders, and how we convince ourselves to place them into different living situations, and also how we're able to sate our own worry, because it's a very worrisome thing to put your loved one into that situation. So how do we make that okay? How do we know they're safe? How do we know they're comfortable? And that sort of thing. So we get to really sort of poke at that.
Yeah, super fun. So this one's a retirement home, Yellowfang Springs. If any of you are fans of those preteen books, The Warriors, I think you'll totally enjoy this stuff because it kind of refers to some of that lore, Yellowfang being a character from that series, but it's very much a tribute. And my kid totally loves cats. We love cats. I got 3 cats. Charles got 3 cats. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like cats? If you don't like cats, what's wrong with you? So retirement home.
The Super Church is pretty great.
We got Super Church, the Elegance Community Church, and what you need to do to worship Tet.
For me, it's very much like, what if instead of Xenu with Scientology, it was Tet, the giant cat who eats you on the day of judgment if you're unforgiven.
Yeah, if you're unforgiven, Tet's totally gonna snack on your kids. Yeah. While you're destined to die once, the cat's ass is the ultimate judge. From Javan Tiger 927.
That's a fun one.
This is totally
there's
fun.
Glorious Tet and all her color glory.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also too, a public works one. So part of these things is working out some of our aggravations about the world around us, and certainly like the mega church and the Yellowfang Springs, the retirement home. I've got gripes about those things.
Yeah.
But
this one I took the lead on. I wrote and put this together and drew everything for it except for these lovely illustrations. So Gord's partner Lindsay drew this with Gord doing the inking on it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Gord drew me this wonderful one.
It's literally the cat's ass.
Literally the cat's ass. and that's my old departed cat Maynard sitting at the computer. So this one is if you've ever dealt with city services, I tried to imagine in a city full of cats that's run by cats and for cats. This is the reality of it. It's very much we'd rather be sleeping. I do get to poke fun at colonialism while I'm there as well. When I talk about the heritage, especially of a Western city like ours. Here are bastard colonial cats who killed all of the mice and birds who lived here previously and took over, and how that heritage follows through to today.
And they did it with a real can-do attitude.
Yeah.
Can do it.
Yeah.
So, okay, you're saying this is what a city run by cats would operate like. But as I'm reading this, it's pretty clear that it's not just about a city with cats.
I've got the Cat Gary Tower here. This is welcome to Cat Gary, and so it pokes fun also at how cities operate, or sometimes how we would say they sometimes fail to operate.
I love it.
Yeah, fun stuff.
As somebody who works in nonprofits and has spent a career working in social services, this spoke to me.
Yeah.
It's like if you're lucky to get service.
Yeah, like I said, you make good cat jokes. You make jokes about where you live and how things are done.
So we have a couple of prints, little posters as well that Charles has put together.
Yeah, so I'm doing, again, this is just kind of flexing some design stuff and looking at inspiration from 60s and 70s, and we could be doing, so we kind of, these ones here are sort of our almost what I call them is our Ganky Chamber of Commerce. They're sort of our fun and at sort of advertising and things like that. These are my sort of riffs and funnin' on the motorsport world, and once again, what do I think that would look like in a world of cats? So, I've based some things on some real things. The Rat Fink, the wonderful Big Daddy Roth things. I reimagined it as a cat. I looked at, this is actually based on a real person. Everyone was called Big Daddy back then for some reason. Every single person. So there's Big Daddy Roth, not to be confused with Big Daddy Don Gurlis, who is a legendary drag racer from the 60s and 70s. And so this is my take on this is Don Perlis. This is actually based on a photograph of Don Gurlis from the era. So yeah, just some fun things. I'm looking at all sorts of motorsport
totally
things.
Fun.
The Indy 500, F1, NASCAR. They're just fun exercises.
So your town in Saskatchewan, did it have like a raceway there?
Just every single grid road we had, but nothing official.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, we were doing quarter mile outside of our town.
Sure.
I remember doing a quarter mile against a Mustang in my 1988 Ford Tempo.
Nice.
I held my own, but somewhere near the back. Yeah, didn't work out. But yeah, I mean, awesome. There was especially if you grew up in small towns, even 100%. Just doing the quarter mile races is a fact of life back in our era.
I always found it as like your town was either like a rodeo town or it had like a speedway town.
And we were more of a cowboy rodeo.
Yeah, ours too.
Every young person who could get their hand, a car meant freedom for us because you literally couldn't do anything without your car. Because we're doing more vast distances. So anybody who had a fast car, they were not afraid to lay the rubber down on every road that would take it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so the last thing here that we are not selling is Crisis on Infinite Emotions. So coming out of the graphic novel, wanting to do something that, I always want to educate people and let them know about different things that are out there. And one thing that I think is really important and people need to know about, which there's kind of a weird piece around it that just happened last week, but psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. It's a new way of helping people who suffer from like depression, anxiety, PTSD, all that stuff. And has been shown to have amazing outcomes in comparison to your sort of general antidepressants and things like that. So I think more people need to know about it. And I thought a good way to do that is to provide that therapy to Batman. So
who needs to deal with his trauma?
He's got some pretty significant trauma, and him not dealing with his trauma, as many writers have pointed out, Gotham ends up being a projection of Bruce Wayne's traumas. So what happens to Joker, and what happens to Gotham? What happens to, say, Huntress, who's kind of a daughter character for him in some of his comics? What happens to these characters? I also really loved, like, when I was going through psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, I was reading Blackest Night, which was such a good way for me to sort of construct that therapy in the changes I was experiencing. So that is brought into this. This is kind of autobiographical because some of it was my experience, but it's very much a crisis book, like a full-on DC crisis of infinite emotions. So we were giving this book away. You can see I've got some actual research from this. International Journal of Transpersonal Studies. I'm not selling this. So it was people were coming by the table and we were chatting them up about this whole situation. And 2 issues of it.
Yeah.
Issue 1,
completed
issue 2.
in 2 parts.
Completed in 2 parts. This is the second issue is very much in Batman's head. I don't want to spoil it too much, but yeah, the new Guardians do show up in this story, and it is a fun story.
Yeah, and I liked issue 1 a lot, and I loved issue 2.
Awesome.
I just as I was constructing it and doing, so I did the lettering and the layout in some of this stuff. And Gord's artwork is really great in the first one, and then goes to like a whole different level in the second one. Like, I don't know, I just want to show one, like, just some of the rendering is just very good. It's just very, very good.
Thanks.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Here, I'll show the demon spread.
Yeah.
Looks pretty metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, that's what we've got so far. We'll see what comes out in 2023.
Yeah,
I'm sure we're going to build
some
up
more
some
surprises this year. I mean, we've got the zine show in November coming up, so who knows?
Yeah.
We could do some nice smaller projects for that one. And I kind of took the last week since panel 1 as kind of a palate cleanser week of just doing Inktober stuff and not doing much else. But I want to get back into doing more of these, like the Genki World projects. I want to do some more of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a whole notebook full of different ideas and different sort of series we can do with that.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens there. Everything with Genki is evolving, right?
Absolutely.
We've got the 2 issues out and they are phenomenal. This is mainly Gord's work so far. I've got 2 issues of my own that are in the hopper.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually got 3, but one's the larger than it's probably put off to next year. But I've got 2 issues I'm working on, just haven't had a chance to finish. So yeah, everything with Genki is evolving. We're both being pretty darn productive.
Yeah.
Every once in a while we need to take a break and just
ground ourselves.
Yeah,
also do some learning. I'm diving into some watercolor, gonna learn watercolor and add that element to my art.
Yeah,
that's something
and what you've done so far is looking great. So I really want people to see what you've been doing on that eventually. And I've been experimenting with a bunch of different stuff as well. So,
and you're doing Inktober, so follow along. So our Instagrams are Genki Comix with an X. And then Charles is with these 2 hands. Yeah, with these 2 hands, YYC. And you can follow along and see what we've been posting there. And and definitely check out his Inktober stuff. He's got an awesome approach to it. Our website, GenkiComics.com. Yeah. And am I forgetting anything? There's the zine show in November. Yeah. And they're already on the YouTube, so make sure you do all of that fun stuff you do, the like, the comment, the subscribe, all of that fun YouTubey stuff. Yeah. And if you got anything you want us to talk about, let us know. I know there was some pretty positive feedback on the Valiant stuff, so we'll check into that.
And you and I have kind of very varying tastes on stuff, so we got lots of deep dives we can do.
We need to take a tour of your bookshelf, my friend.
Yes, I will be doing some of that kind of stuff, because I've got a somewhat eclectic, and lots of like real basic stuff, but also some pretty eclectic.
I don't think what you got is basic. I think it's pretty awesome. All right, we'll see you next time, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.